Hello, fellow quilters. We are excited to have you back for the Flowering Cactus Worx Session, the second instructional tutorial for the Valley Blossoms quilt. In today's class with Judy, you will learn the techniques for cutting, piecing, and assembling the 16-inch squares that complete the second group of your quilt. We will teach you more applique techniques using turn-under applique. If you are doing the digitized embroidery design, please remember that Vanessa Fromm will give you a detailed workshop on July 25th to cover the techniques for completing the digitized embroidery. Please pay special attention at the end of this workshop for information on how to assemble your squares based on the type of embroidery you are completing. While this class is specific to the Valley Blossoms quilt, this block is used in several other Quiltworx designs. Therefore, if you are working on one of the following patterns, the information here will also be helpful. The pattern called OK Corral also requires 8 16-inch flowering cactus blocks. You can use the information here to create that design as well. Your fabrics and color arrangement may be different, but the general concept is the same. Additionally, the Irish thistle requires 4 flowering cactus blocks. The cutting in the video has been adapted for 8 blocks, so please refer to your pattern for only 4. However, the piecing and applique steps are the same. You can also use this information if you have selected the flowering cactus block for any of the Meadowstar mixer layouts that use 16-inch squares or the Courtyard Fountain mixer series, coming soon to Quiltster and Quiltworx. If this is your first time seeing a work session video and you are interested in working on the Valley Blossoms quilt, please visit the Quiltworx website, Quiltster, or your local quilt shop to learn more about purchasing the pattern, planning your quilt, and finding fabrics. A playlist is available on the Quiltworx YouTube channel for the Valley Blossoms design that will take you through each of the videos released to date in order so you can catch up to where we are at today. These videos will always be available on YouTube for your reference. We are excited to see everyone's quilts as they progress through the series and successfully complete this design by Quiltworx and Fabric Confetti, incorporating both paper piecing and digitized embroidery techniques that can lead you on a quilting journey for more projects from Judy and Vanessa Fromm. Let's join Judy in the quilting studio.
Hi everybody, we're back. We're going to start our second video series on the flowering cactus pattern. Right? I'm going to just show you a picture of the block kind of back here. This is 4 blocks put together. In your package, you should receive 2 patterns that say flowering cactus. Right? Inside your pattern, you're going to find 2 things in here. You're going to find your foundation papers, which are right here, and your template pieces, okay? So pull both of those out of both patterns. Then we're going to build our bags. Remember I told you in the first video to set up your bags, so you're going to go here to where it tells you what bags you need, and we have a bag BD1. Then we have a bag BD2, one that says BD3, and one that says BD4. The BD4 bag is the bag we're going to put all of the applique templates into right now. So we're just gonna slip these in here like this, and then we're gonna set this bag aside because we're not gonna be using it for a little bit. All right, now we're going to take our other 3 bags and just put them off to the side as well, because we have to cut out some foundation papers before we get ready for those. All right, the next thing that I want to go over before we start cutting out the papers is if you pre-cut all your fabrics according to the instructions that were set up on the video, you're going to have a stack of fabric that looks just like this, and you should have everything labeled. And so what you want to do is go through and get everything in order. So I have BD1, fabric BD1 on the top. I have fabric BD2 on the underneath it, and then we go to fabric 3, 4, 5, L, 5R, 6L, 6R, 7L, 7R, 8L, 8R, and then we have a BD9. So if you have that all set up, then you're just going to take this and put this all in order and stack it. And again, we're going to just set it off to the side. Okay? And then we'll pull each fabric as we need it. All right, so I went through a bunch of video. The last video session we did showed you how to cut out some foundation papers. But I'm going to go back through that again with these papers because there's a few different techniques in the cutting and preparing for the papers with these. So I'm going to try to skip over the parts that we don't need to duplicate, but on the stuff I have to duplicate, then we're going to go through that, all right? So you should have 2 pages of everything. I'm only going to cut with 1 page today. Because I've already pre-cut a whole bunch of stuff, so I don't need, I'm just gonna demo what you're gonna do. But you should have 2 sheets of 685, you should have 2 sheets of 506, and 2 sheets of 522, all right? So, I'm gonna separate my pages. And remember, I said you're actually gonna have 2 pages, I'm just going to cut 1. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to take this, and because I want to do a quick review, I'm just going to slice this right down in the center, and then I'm going to place these pieces into my bag. These go into bag BD2, okay? And remember, you're going to have 2 of these sets. So I'm going to reach over here and slip them into bag BD2. And you already know how to stack those and cut those out, so you can do that. Then we're going to put these pieces here. And again, these are your foundation papers. You're going to have 2 of these because altogether you're actually making 8 blocks. And these patterns are set up for 4 blocks. So you're making 8. So we're going to put this one, goes into bag BD1. And you'll have 2 of these. And if you cut your papers out first, then you'll just have all the parts for that. And you'll have 8 pieces. All right. So now we're going to take template layout, the TP 506. And again, you're going to have 2 of these pages. And if we open this up, we have a whole bunch of pieces here that are for the applique. And I'm just going to quickly cut around these like this. And you'll have 2 of these as well. And you're going to place these pieces in your bag. Those go in bag BD3. And you'll have 2 of those sets right there. Okay. So the rest of this stuff, I need to show you some stuff about cutting out. On the rest of this page, we have a template layout sheet, and you guys know how to cut out the template layout sheets. Remember, we cut these right on the line, like this. And I'm going to go ahead and cut these out because we need these when we set up the fabric, so start cutting the fabric. Okay, so these pieces actually go into bag BD2. And then we're going to cut these pieces apart. And you have a whole bunch of single templates on here. And these single templates are actually templates for paper piecing. And the single templates as well go into bag BD2. So I'm gonna set these aside and put these into bag BD2. And then we have these single templates are also BD2, all right? So we have our BD2 stuff squared away. Now we're getting into a few things that you guys have not seen. We have a template layout sheet right here in the center, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out. And this piece here goes into bag BD1. And now we're down to the stuff I have to show you. So we're going to take this. So this sheet has a whole bunch of template pieces that have dashed lines around them. Side for now. And what we're going to do is cut each one of them apart, because we have to, when we actually get to the cutting, we have to sew the template, or the TPRs, which are transition lines. And it's a new technique that you're going to have to work with. The other thing that's going to be different about this is when you read these templates, it also tells you that these all are placed on the wrong side of the fabric. Because when we actually do the sewing on these, we leave the paper on when we assemble the pieces. So you're going to want to pay attention to that. And these templates are called B1R and B1L. And you're going to have you should end up with about 8 of these, of each left and right unit. So then we're going to clip all of these together. And you're going to have 8 of these pieces. I'm only going to work with 4 today so that you guys don't have to watch me for an extra half hour of video, doing this video. And now we're going to have 4 of these. All right, so I'm going to cut these out, and we're going to stop right now at the video. So I'll be back. Okay, I actually cut a couple of my sheets in half, but I want to go over how to stack your papers. Now you can actually take these, and if you have the light table, you can lay these onto your light table like this, and then you can lay the next batch right over the top of it. And you can match that up. And then you can just take a glue pen, and you can actually just put a little bit of glue between the 2 papers. Don't glue the foundation stuff together, just where the excess, where it's going to get cut off. And then we can come in here, and I'm just going to put a little bit more glue right through here. And now my papers are stacked nice and evenly. Then I can grab my staple. Now we can come in here and we can put a staple in each one of these pieces. So now we have them all stacked and layered, and you can do this on any foundation papers that you cut out if you have more than one sheet. And I've stapled papers up to 15 layers before, but you got to make sure that they're all pinned, or use a light table to make sure that they're all stacked properly. So now I'm going to show you some other little tricks. The ruler that I talked about the other day in your first video, the curved diamond ruler, also helps it's really easy to cut out your papers when you have to deal with curves. So basically I can just take this curved ruler and set down here and set it outside the curve pieces about 1/8 of an inch. And then we're going to flip my paper around so I don't have to worry about it moving. So by not cutting around the outside, it keeps my sheets together as I go through and trim each one of these pieces off. So now we're going to come in and we're going to start doing the inside cut, and I use the inside of the ruler for that. Now we're going to sort these, because you should have a set of your B2Rs and a set of your B2Ls. And then we're just going to put a paper clip on each group. I've gone through all of my bags, pulled the template pieces out. I have them all cut now to the size, and I have them all in order. So as I was cutting these, I was actually going through my instructions, and I was reading my instructions to see which template pieces went with each fabric. And then I labeled my fabric. So for fabric BD1, I just labeled these templates with fabric BD2. And I went all the way down, and it really helps you keep things organized. I'm sorry, that's BD1. The next one's BD2, the next one in there, and it just keeps going down in order. I have the one out of order, okay? So now I'm gonna grab my fabrics, and I'm gonna just flip my templates over like this, and I'm gonna flip my fabric over as well. Now the very first fabric, BD9, the templates for BD9 are actually in bag 3. So I'm gonna just slip this fabric into bag 3 with the templates, and we'll cut those later. Okay, so we're gonna set that right there. So the next group of templates is supposed to be for fabric BD8 and BDL. So these templates go with this piece. And then this is my BD7 and 7R. And these are my 7R pieces right here. And then we're going to go to the next group. I have 6L and 6R. And this is 6L and 6R. And then the next group. In order, these were BD5, L and R, which are these pieces. Then we have BD4 templates, and that's these pieces right here. And then we have the BD3 fabric, and that BD3 has a template. And BD2 has a template. And those are the fabric numbers that I'm reading. And then this is BD1 fabric. And those are the templates. So now I have all of my cutting organized so that I can actually follow my instructions and not get off track. So we're going to start with fabric BD1. And in our cutting instructions for fabric BD1, you guys are actually going to have 2 booklets here, all right? And the booklets are actually set up to do just 4 pieces. And so what you want to do is just do the combination. If you use the cutting instructions that were set up on Quiltster, it told you how many strips to cut for 8 pieces, which may be a little bit different than what you've seen in your pattern, because your pattern's telling you to cut for 4 pieces. So I just went through my instructions, and it's actually this set over here. And I quickly went through and compared what I had in Quiltster to my instructions so that I could just work with 1 booklet, all right? So the instructions for 1 booklet tell you that you need 2 strips, but there's enough fabric that if you cut 3 strips, you can get 8 pieces out of it, all right? And then the next one down, I only had to have 1 strip from each fabric, and we had to cut 2 because we're doing 8 pieces. I'm hoping that that will make sense to you. So when you're going through your instructions, remember your instructions are written to make 4 of the cactus blocks, but you're going to make 8. So you can combine them and cut it all out at one time if you just do a little bit of pre-organizing there, all right? So my very first piece for fabric BD1 told me I had to have 3 strips. So I'm going to open up my strips, and it tells me I need to cut 4 pieces, so I'm going to double that because I need 8. I'm making twice as many blocks for this quilt. So we're going to take these pieces and stack them on top of each other. Always open them and stack them right side up unless your instructions tell you differently. And these instructions actually do tell us to cut them with right sides up. And normally you're going to find that on the template and actually in the written instructions. So now I'm just going to take my template pieces, which I'm going to have 2 because I had 2 sets of instructions. And I'm just going to slice here. And then we're going to slice here. So this gives me 6 pieces because I had 3 layers of fabric. So I'm just going to stack these underneath like that. And then I'm going to bring my fabric. And I only need 8 total, so I'm going to remove a piece here and set it to the side. And then we're going to stack another one, which is pretty much the right size. So we're just going to take this and stack all of these pieces underneath here. And we really don't need both template pieces. So, and actually I'm going to go like that because this one has my fabric color on it. Right? Now we're going to grab our paper clips. We're going to use a lot of paper clips for this quilt. And I'm going to put a paper clip on both sections. And then I'm just going to clean off the end here. And then we're going to clean off the end up here. And then I'm going to grab my other ruler because it works a little better for me. It's longer. And then I'm going to cut right here. And in my instructions, it's going to tell me that these go back into bagged 1. So I'm going to find my bag 1, and I'm going to slip these pieces into bag 1 just like that. Now we're going to go to fabric BD2. And again, we have to open our fabrics. Now sometimes I like to look at my template pieces and see how they're set up, and if I have fabrics that don't have a right and a wrong side, which this one does not, and there's not going to be a grain line issue, then I can just leave it stacked this way. And since I had 2 patterns, I'm going to have 2 template pieces as well. And then I can actually take and put the second template here. So what I'm doing here is I'm just finding ways to save myself cutting time. And since I didn't have to worry about a right or a wrong side to this piece of fabric, I can actually just stack them, leave it stacked like this. It won't change my grain line, like this. And then I'm just going to come in here, and I don't have to be really accurate with that cut, because all I'm doing is trying to get a piece that's big enough to work with. And now I can take both these pieces, and it tells me to put these back in bag 1. So I'm just going to clip them all together and set them over here and put them in bag 1. And when I'm cutting, if I don't have to do a lot of sorting, it's a lot better for me to get them into the bags, because then I don't have to work twice. Okay, so this is fabric BD3, and again I have 2 template pieces because we're going to cut 8 pieces for our quilt. And I don't have to, I can leave it folded because I'm using a fabric that does not have any right or wrong side to it. And we're going to put some paper clips. I'm going to cut it first right down the middle. And now I have my pieces clipped together, and it tells me to put this in bag number 1. So I'm going to slip this into bag number 1. All right. The next piece is, and I need to read just a little bit on this one before I go cutting. So these pieces are a little bit different pieces. We're going to, I've already cut these into the sections. And because these have to have, these pieces are the ones that I'd reminded you when I was cutting out the foundation papers to place these on the wrong side of the fabric. So this fabric does have a little bit of a right and a wrong side. So I'm going to turn my wrong side up, and then I take 1 template piece and I put it onto that. So we're going to grab our repositionable glue, and each one of these templates have to be put onto a separate piece of fabric, so we're not stacking the whole thing, because when we start sewing these pieces together, I want the foundation paper underneath that piece for support and in the curved piecing. They're real small, and so you're going to be putting heavier pieced units onto this, so I thought we should give you guys the foundation paper underneath each piece, and that way it'll make it easier for you to complete your curved piecing. So I'm going to take this, and each one of my samples strips will have a piece of fabric on them. And I'm only going to do a couple of each one of these, and then I'll come back. So I have 2 different sizes there. Those were my B1L templates, and I'm going to do 2 of the B1R pieces. That way you don't have to watch me do the whole thing. And that's the wrong side there. And we want B1R. Okay, so I'm going to just take the rest of these template pieces and put it back with their fabric and complete these later. Okay, And I'm going to put these, and these go into bag BD1 as well. And I'm going to put another paper clip on those. So now, the other thing I want to show you is on these pieces there's some TRP lines. And we want to sew those TRP lines before we go any further with it, because we don't want to cut anything out. So I'm quickly going to show you how to set up and sew and chain the TRP lines. And this really speeds up the process. So when you're doing TRP lines, if you trim everything off and then go back and sew the TRP lines, you feel like you have another 4 or 5 hours of work ahead of you just getting the TRP lines. But if you actually work through this and do this as you're cutting everything out and as you're doing the paper piecing, if you see a TRP line and it's got fabric under it, just go ahead and sew it and run it through as a chain. I have my machine set up now, and what I want to do is show you guys how I go through and do my TRP lines instead of doing each one at a time. So we're actually going to chain these. So I'm going to set up the first one underneath my machine, and I'm going to start sewing. Then I pick up the second one, and I'm just going to lift my foot. Then we're going to pick up the third one. And then we're going to pick up the fourth one. And I'm going to have to lift my foot to get to this one. And then I'm going to cut my thread. And then I'm just going to do that again. So then we'll just start with our stack here. Now we have these all chained together. Because those are T-templates, we have to do some further cutting on those, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our rotary cutter and cut in between each one of these to get all the threads cut apart. And then we're going to stack them, set them to the side. Now I'm going to show you how to use this curved ruler. First of all, I'm going to come in and we're going to cut the straight lines. Okay, then we're going to rotate it around. I'm going to cut the straight line on this one. Okay. Then I'm just going to do a rough cut in between the two templates to separate the pieces. Now we take our curved ruler, and this one is an inside curve, and I'm going to cut my little smart corner down there, and then I'm going to place this inside curve right along that line, and you'll find that it's almost a perfect fit. And then we're going to put this on the outside, use the outside of the ruler, and we're going to start cutting. About halfway through, you're going to have to adjust your ruler a little bit, and then we're going to cut the tip of it. So now we have our pieces, and then the next thing that we want to do is find our little scissors. Whoops. And we're going to go back and finish cutting off the excess thread there, and we're going to stack it. I'm going to do the second one, and then you won't have to watch me anymore. So on this one, so we're going to take this, and we're going to do that inside cut. I'm going to cut my little smart corner, then I'm going to lay this down, and we're going to line it up. And about halfway up, we're going to readjust the ruler, slide it up just a little bit. And there we go. Then we're going to clean off the little threads. and you're going to stack those. And when you're doing those, you want to make sure that you're stacking the BR1 groups together and the B1L groups, because you have B1R and B1L. I'm just going to clip these back together, and we're going to put them back into bag B1 to finish at a later date. Now we're to fabric BD5L and BD5R. So my BD5L and BD5R fabrics are the same color. Some of you will have different colors in yours if you choose to do your templates a different color. And in the quilt on the wall, if you buy a kit, yours are going to be cut from the same fabrics, it looks like, too. So you won't have two different colors. If I have two different colors, then what I want to do is open these up and stack one group of colors on the bottom and the other group of colors on the top. So we're going to take this and open this up. And they are all cut from the same template, so you can stack them all together. And because we're working with two different patterns, you're going to have lots of templates there. So you can actually lay these out to kind of get an idea how big to cut each one of these. I'm going to actually, I can see that I can go right to there very comfortably. So I'm just going to come over here, cut here, and then I'm going to take this fabric, stack it underneath it. And that's going to put 8 layers of fabric underneath 2 templates, which that's quite a bit to cut through. I normally try not to cut through more than 12 layers of fabric. So I'm going to just keep my 2 templates. And I'm going to put a paper clip on each section. Now, these templates don't want to lay down very well, so I'm going to grab my repositionable glue here, and we're going to put it on there so that that piece will lay down. And we can do the same thing with this one. I love this repositionable glue. It just keeps everything flat for me. Now we're going to take our pieces and we're going to put a paper clip on each one. I'm going to cut along this edge. I'm going to cut in the middle. And then I'm going to clean the salvage off of this edge right here. Okay. Now these pieces go into bag number 2. And since I'm going to do the paper piecing for bag number 1 first, then I'm going to just leave these together until I'm ready to actually start paper piecing. At that time, we would come in here and we would go cut line 1, cut line 2, 3, and 4 across there and stack the pieces right as we're cutting them. But it keeps them all together. If I cut them all apart and throw them in the bag, then I have to go back and sort everything out. So it's just a lot cleaner for me to slip them into the bag uncut. And then we're just gonna put them into bag number 2. Now we're going to grab the next strip. And again, on these pieces, I'm going to check. And this does kind of have a little bit of a right and wrong side. So I am going to open up my strips. And everything's going to be facing right side up. And we have 2 different colors for this fabric. We have a unit, actually we have 2 template pieces. We have a B2L template and a B2R template. I'm going to lay this in here. And I'm going to look at my pattern, and it says I have to have 4 pieces from each one of these. So if I take the 4 pieces and set them up there like this, I could kind of see where my pieces are. So I'm going to go ahead and cut, and then I'm going to rotate this around. So we're going to take this, put it on here like this, and I'm going to grab my repositionable glue so I can get those pieces to lay down like this. I have my 2 pieces glued on, so now I'm just going to take this, cut between the lines, and I'm going to go ahead and just cut around these template pieces now. And then that should give us our 16 pieces that we need. And these go into bag B1. Okay, ladies, we're working with fabric BD7R and BD7L, okay? I use the same color on both pieces, but you can use 2 different colors. We have 1 template. Your pattern, each of your patterns come with 2 templates. That's why we have 4. And basically you're just going to put your templates, and they're all the same template, so it doesn't matter which piece they go on to. We just wanted to make sure you had templates for each color. All right, so we're just going to take our repositionable glue, and I'm going to quickly put a little bit of glue on each one of these. And we really don't need those templates. And then we're just going to take and slice it here and here. And then we're going to move our little tags here because we don't need them. And actually what I'm going to do is put this little tag back on my template piece so that I know which one goes with the R pieces and which one goes with the L. And I'd only really need that if I had 2 colors here that I was playing with. Okay, so now we're going to put paper clips on these and set these aside. And those go into bag 2. And then we're going to do that again for BD8L. And again, I just used all the same colors for the one I'm doing. But I think these all have a whole bunch of different colors in them. So you need to pay attention a little bit to that. So I can stack these up. And this template number is B25. And again, all we have to do is just put a little bit of repositionable glue on the back side of this. So we have one on each one of our templates. And I'm going to move my little mark up here and put it on my template so I remember which one is my left and right. And that will be really important for you if these are 2 different fabrics, to remember which ones are left and right when you go to put your pieces together. So when I'm done, I should have 8 pieces of fabric underneath this, because remember, we're making 8 blocks instead of 4. And right, now we have one more piece here that we've got to put together. And this is bag BD3. And we're going to open this fabric up the whole width, because if I don't, I'm going to end up with some directional issues with my grain line. So if I set this up like this, then my grain line is going to come out the way it's supposed to come out. And we have to make the blocks we need for our quilt. We have to have 4 strips instead of just 2. So we're going to stack them all up. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the way these pieces are positioned. And I only cut out 1 set of templates. You do have 2, but we really only need 1 set. And we're going to grab our repositionable glue. And then we're going to look at our picture. So I have to have 2 different stacks. We're going to put our left templates on one and our right templates on the other sheet. So let's go back here like this. And this one is a right template. Well, it's going to actually go like this. This piece right here is my right template. And it's going to be just like this. And I'll move those into the camera here in just a second so you can see them. Okay. So there's the way these are set up. Then after I cut these out, then I'm going to reposition these. So I'm going to carefully cut around each one of these templates. And I'm going to give myself just a little bit of room because I don't want to do a perfect cut right now. So I just need a little room. And I'm going to fold this one back. Now I'm going to move this one. Tells me to move this one down right into this position. There we go. Just have to move it over just a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to take this one and we're going to flip this one over like this. And I'm going to cut this a little bit closer right here so I can see where to position it. And now we're on there. I need to move this one just a little bit further over like this. Okay. And again, I'm going to actually take this and do just a little bit of, make it a little bit bigger than what I need. And then we're going to rotate this one again. And then this one's going to fit like this. Oops. Okay. We're going to cut this one out. I'm going to flip this one over. And we're going to flip this one over. So once I get these all laid out on top of my pieces, now I'm going to come back and grab my curved ruler here, and I'm going to cut these right on the line. So now we have these 4 pieces cut out, or I should say, you actually should have 8 of each one of them, and we do. So you guys will actually have 2 templates to work with here. So I do want to show you, I'm going to remove these ones off of these other pieces for a second. And I'm going to just show you a couple little tricks here. So if I take a second template, I can actually get these positioned. And I can put 2 of them upside down and get them, and 2 of them right side up, because you're going to have plenty of template pieces. And you'll be able to actually get a really good feel for how you're going to actually set those pieces onto this. All right? And you just have to do your cutting. Now, I'm not going to cut this set up right now. I'm going to move forward with some other little tips and tricks. I'm going to put my template pieces back onto these, and then I want to show you some other stuff that I do with TRP lines that makes it really easy and I'll cut that later. So when I get all of my background templates done, we have these TRP lines right now, and I don't have an actual template piece for every single one, so I'm going to reuse this template piece several times. I'm going to turn my machine on. And a really good trick that I've found is if I actually will stitch through all 8 layers, right now it's going to put some holes in there, and it keeps these pieces together when they're in the bag. And then right before I get ready to sew them up, I look at it, and if it's an internal line and I can see where those holes are after I pull the threads out of the 8 pieces, then I don't have to sew that TRP line, because sometimes these are going to be sewn onto something that's really easy to be able to place your eye and see the little holes left in. Now on batiks, it's going to show up a lot better for you. If it's an external line that I'm going to need when I start sewing all of the block units together, then I like to go back and sew those so that when I'm sewing, I have that TRP line showing on both the front and back side. And once you start ironing those TRP lines, start relaxing the little holes that you put in there, start relaxing. So I like to just sew the whole thing. So I'm going to show you how I do that. We're going to go to the sewing machine. So I have 3 TRP lines, so I'm just going to sew each one of them. And this will put all 8 of my fabrics stitched together. I gotta find my little scissors. So just to show you what I did here, I just did 1 stitch all the way through all of my layers. So when I'm ready to actually use this piece, I'll pull those threads out and I'll have all of the holes left in it. In the meantime, they're all sewn together. They're not going to go anywhere, and we're going to put them back in the bag. We're going to start with unit B1L and B1R. That's what I'm going to show you how to do the paper piecing on. I'm only going to do 2 papers for each one, just so we can speed through the demo. All right? We have all of our pieces. If you look, it's going to tell you what your template piece is on both units. So we're looking for section 1, B1R. And if I look, I have my section 1, B1R template right here. The next template is section 2, B12. So section 1 doesn't have a sew side, but section 2 does. So we're just going to lay this piece down on here. And these are going to go with that group. We have one extra piece, but this piece is actually a T template, so it's sewn on separately. On this unit here, this is section 1. Nope, on this one, section 1 is the big piece, and section 2 is the spike. And the reason why we changed that is because it forces the seams to be pressed in opposing directions, which makes it a lot easier to put your blocks together. Because when you have these long points, now your points will actually lay down and tuck into each other. All right? So you need to pay attention. Just because on one of them we start with section 1 in it, sometimes they start in different places. So just pay attention to that, right? So we're going to start with the BL unit, and I'm going to pull my staples out. And don't worry if it tears the paper, it's not a big deal. And then we're going to flip our fabric up so that it's wrong side up, because it's the very first piece that we're working with. We're going to grab a glue stick, and I'm going to use the Yoo-Hoo glue stick. You don't want to use the repositionable glue stick when you're doing the paper piecing, because you don't want the repositional glue, if you get it on the back of your paper, when you're on your foundation paper, sometimes it'll be really, really hard to start sewing through your machine. So you want to make sure not to get it onto the back of your foundation papers. It only goes onto your template pieces. And now we're going to take this, we're going to run that through like that, and now we're done with this template. I like to keep my templates until I'm done, because that way, if I make a mistake, I have a template piece there where I can just go cut another chunk of fabric. We're going to grab a fold template. We're going to place the fold template on line 1. And we're going to fold this section back. Then we're going to grab our add a quarter ruler. And we're going to trim. Then we're going to set this piece off to the side here. And we're going to do the same thing on the next one. And you're going to follow through and do all 8 pieces for each one. So now we have our trimmed edge. We're going to pick this piece up, pull the paper clip off. And if you look, this is your sew side. So you don't want to mix up your sew sides. So my sew side matches here. And all I have to do is just lay this on. And notice how when I have this laid on that I have fabric under the tip here, and there's fabric that lays all the way up off the end there. Then we're going to take the next piece, we're going to put it on there just like this. So I like to offset those a little bit, and then we're going to take this piece and we're going to pull it up and make sure that you have fabric past this tip down here. Because if you don't, then you'll end up having to pull it all off. And it's really easy for someone to pick this up and match it. And I'm going to show you a very common mistake people make. So if I lay this piece down, this is what our heads do. We pick this up and we go down here and we lay it right down along that edge. And look, there's no fabric underneath this part. And so they sew that on, and now you have to go back and pick them all off. So it's important. Pay attention to the tip of that, because it's going to fold down further than the fabric, the other piece of fabric that's under there, right? Now these are really long pieces, so I'm going to use my fabric glue pen right here, and I'm gonna go in here and glue. And remember, we talked about if the light's on the bottom, you want to offset to make sure that you can see that light fabric. So I'm just going to pull it back a little bit and give myself a little bit extra room on those. And sometimes you just have to move them off of each other to get those to lay in position. Oh, this is what's causing me the problem. I still have my sticky on there. And there we go. We have both pieces glued along that long edge, and now I don't have to worry about that moving when I take that to the machine, right? So we have those two ready to go to the machine. Now we're going to come over here. Because we only have two pieces, we can go ahead and set up the other side right now. And then we can run both the left and right pieces through your machine at the same time. So I'm going to remove the stapler. Or the staple, I should say. And then I'm going to find section 1. And section 1 on this one is this. So it's got to be flipped over like that. And then we're going to put our glue underneath section 1. And if you just lift the paper a little bit, you can see where that's going to set. And don't put too much glue on it. Then we're going to grab the next piece. Okay. So now we have both those. We're going to grab our fold template. I'm going to move my clips so I don't run over them with my rotary cutter. Fold back on line 1. Just crease the paper. Make sure it's a straight line. And then put the quarter ruler. Now if your quarter ruler is too short, that's why we have these long ones, so that we don't have to go through and do a whole bunch of additional cuts. Now we can just cut the whole length of that piece. We're going to set it aside. We're going to grab the fold template, move it over to the next piece. Get that folded back really nice. Put our quarter ruler onto it. And trim. And then we're going to stack. So you would stack all of your pieces before you move on to the next step. Now we're done with those. And now this piece, this is my sew side right here. So all I have to do is just, my sew side's always away from me, and then I just come in here and make sure that I have fabric. So remember, we're adding fabric underneath this part. We're not trying to add it underneath the point because we've already glued the fabric onto section 1. So this is going to look a little bit different than the other one. Then we're going to take the next piece up here and we're going to position that on there. And we're going to look at both ends and make sure that my paper has fabric under it. And then I'm going to glue my edge. And this piece has the dark on the bottom, so I don't really have to worry about any shadowing at all on there. Then we're going to take this one. And sometimes you just have to be a little bit more patient with these long, skinny pieces because they have a tendency to want to move on you. So I'm just going to pull the paper back and glue that. And then I'm going to just put a little bit more glue on that paper to hold that in position. And there we go. And now we're going to sew both those seams to finish up our pieces. Okay, I'm going to sew on line 1. And then I'm going to pick up my next piece, and we're just going to do our chain piecing. And remember, if you have a thread cutter on your machine, you can just push that little button and it'll cut those threads for you. If you don't have a thread cutter on your machine, you're going to run it through and chain it and then cut the threads later. Now I'm going to quickly go to the ironing board. And I don't think you need to watch me iron on this. I'm just going to press them and then I'm going to come back to the sewing machine. Okay, I want you to look, there's TRP lines on these pieces. Instead of throwing them back in the bag, let's just go ahead and do all the sewing on our TRP line now. Then you won't have to come back and worry about it later. So we're just going to chain through these TRP lines. All right. We've got all of our TRP lines sewn. And now those pieces are done. Okay, I'm going to show you how to trim this up. First of all, we're going to place the ruler along the straight line and just make sure that it sets under there, because your stitches are sometimes going to move your paper, and so just straighten the paper up underneath your ruler and then trim that line and check it, and if it didn't trim right on the line, then just put the ruler back down again and just make sure, because sometimes if you don't have enough pressure on there, the fabric will move. And you want to be accurate with your trimming on these little tiny curves like this. So now I'm going to cut this top smart corner. And if it keeps moving on you, you can actually put a little bit of glue right underneath this. It's not going to hurt it. And just to let it hold to that, and now it'll hold to the paper or the fabric, and it won't move as much on you. Now we're going to trim the smart corner. Then we're going to take our ruler again. And we're going to place it right along that line. And these rulers really fit these curves nice. Then I just move it down about an inch and just keep rotating the ruler down. And then we're going to trim the bottom. And then we're going to trim off the little smart corner here. And this is my B1R piece. And it goes on here just like this. And I think I trimmed the other one right there. All right. Now we don't sew these together. These won't get sewn together till later on in the quilt. So now we're done with those two pieces. Okay, we're working with the pieces that were in bag B2. All right, so in these pieces you have two sheets foundation papers. One says B2L and the other one says B2R. In reality, they are exactly the same. You can actually piece them together if you want. The only difference between them is when you start setting them into your blocks, if you have different colors, then you're going to want to keep your lefts and your rights separated because of where the colors will set up in the block. But the piecing on both units is the same. So if I'm looking at my quilt, so one of these is for the left side and one of them is for the right side. But the pieces are actually the same size. It just depends on where it sits when you start to sew the final block together. And that's why we distinguish the difference between a left and a right. All right? So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go through my papers and I'm going to set one of my bundles aside for my right side pieces and one for the left side. Then we're going to look at this. This one says it's for the right side. This one's for the left. This one is for the right, and this one's for the left. And then I have 2 stacks of these, and it really doesn't matter. So I'm gonna put those with the right, and these are gonna go with the left, okay? And then I'm not gonna paper piece all of these right now, so I'm gonna put this group back in. And I'm only going to do a few pieces off of this. I'll probably only do 1 paper because I have a bunch of them already done. Okay, so I'm going to grab my ruler and I'm going to cut these pieces apart now that we're ready to start the sewing. And I'm going to go through and do all my cut lines. Okay. Now we're going to stack all of our pieces here. And we're going to start with the largest section, which is section 7. And it's going to go on here just like this. And what I'm going to do is pull 1 piece off the bottom and put it on the top. And we're only going to make 1 unit here, okay? We have section 7, then we have to go to section 6, which is right here. So I'm just going to take 1 off the bottom. So this is a really good way for you to actually go through if you want to make 1 block before you start. Just pull it right off the bottom. And then you can make 1 block and then come back and do your chain piecing. And now we're going to go to section 5. And that's right here. We're going to pull 1 piece off the bottom. And then we're going to go to section 4. And then we're going to find section 3. And then we're going to find section 2. All right, so we have everything stacked, and then number 1. And I'm going to grab another paper clip and put that onto number 1. Okay, so I'm going to grab 1 piece of paper. I'll put the other one back with all of the others. Okay, we're going to start the paper piecing. We have everything stacked, so I can just pull 1 piece off the top. I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to put that piece right underneath the center on the back. And then we're going to find our fold template. And we're just going to do 1 piece to kind of go through to show you. We're going to fold back. We're going to grab our add a quarter roller. And we're going to trim. Then I'm going to just flip my stack down and pick up the next piece that I set aside. And it's going to go right underneath there, just like that. And then I'm going to quickly glue those edges together like this. And then go to my machine. And you don't have to follow me to the machine. I'm just going to go through the motions and show you each piece when we put it on. I want to point out that most of these pieces are going to overlap each other. So when you start sewing on the line, you want to start a little bit before your solid line and go past your solid line when you're sewing. And then we're going to press it. And I'm just going to do some finger pressing right now, just to speed this up. And it doesn't hurt to know how to do finger pressing. And then I'm going to flip that piece over. And we're going to find line 2. We're going to fold back. And see how I have to tear that because I sewed all the way through that? You're going to have a lot of those tears on these pieces. And it's because they overlap each other. And now we're going to grab the next piece, which is right here. And we're going to position it. And I have the light on the bottom, so I'm going to actually offset it so that I can see the light piece. And then we're going to put our glue stick on there, and then I'm going to go back to my machine and sew. We're going to finger press that. That's what it looks like so far, which looks a little funny. Now, one of the things I like to do is, and I can do this even when I'm stacking, because I'll just stack a bunch of them, but I like to get rid of a lot of this excess fabric here, because it makes it easier to see where to position the next piece. So now we're going to find line 3, which is right here. We're going to fold it back, and we're going to tear that piece of thread there. And we're going to find the piece for section 4, which is this piece right here. And now I'm going to put this right down, and you can see there's plenty of room on all of these long spikes, because your spikes are going to change height on a few of the pieces, so you're not going to be short fabric. We have it glued, we're going to sew. We're going to finger press this piece. Now when I'm doing one single piece, I don't have an issue with finger pressing, but I would tell you that it's going to be a lot faster to actually go to an ironing board when you're doing a whole stack. Plus your pieces are going to come out looking a lot nicer if you use your iron and a little bit of steam. Okay, so we're going to move this piece, and then we're going to grab the piece for section 5. So I've been showing you how to glue those edges. I'm going to actually do this one without gluing, because you will train yourself to be able to pick them up without having to glue everything. So when I put this at my machine, I have to hold on to my fabrics and pick them up and hold them together, and then I slide that underneath there. And I have to make sure that my pieces don't fold back underneath, and then I double check and align. So if you glue, you can just sit there and sew, but if you're not gluing, then you're gonna have to do all these extra little steps to make sure that fabric's not moving. And then notice that I'm holding on to that as I go through so that it doesn't move underneath the pressure foot. Now we have our next pieces. So you can kind of get an idea what that's going to start looking like. And again, I'm just going to come in and clean off some of that excess there. Now we're going to find lines. 5 is my next line, which is right here. I'm going to fold this back, and again, I'm going to have to tear. And so I tore all the way down that line because it came pretty much, I sewed right off at the end. And then just make sure your fold template stays tight against the fold. And then you're going to put your ruler on there and trim that off. And then we're going to take this piece, and you're going to lay it right there in the center and move forward. Over here to our machine, I'm going to finger press that piece. And I'm going to flip over. We're on line 6 now. And now I'm going to actually just tear this paper right down the line. We're going to cut. And then I'm going to put this. And this is really wrinkly, so I'm just going to hit it with an iron really quick. My iron wasn't very hot, so still has a few little wrinkles in it. We're going to place that on there, and then I'm going to sew. Okay, before I go any further, I'm going to go press everything. I have all my pieces on. We're going to set these aside and then come back and do the chain piecing. I'm going to hit this with an iron and get all the wrinkles out. Okay, so I have it pressed all nice and flat. Now, before I do any trimming, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to sew my TRP line. So I like to do the TRP lines before I actually trim, because then it's going to cut all my threads off, and it saves me having to clip all of the side threads. So the only ones I have to clip and get rid of are the ones that are in the middle of the fabric. Now we're going to take our ruler, our curved ruler here. We're going to place this. If you have a turntable, it's really nice to work with a turntable with this, because now all we have to do is just keep rotating the table. So we're going to cut this back, and we're going to roll that ruler like this. Then we're going to do the outside edge of the ruler. And now we have our last line here that we're going to trim. Now when you get done, you're going to come in and you're going to look at all your corners, and there's a little teeny point right there that you're going to want to get rid of on that. And now my piece is done. Okay, ladies, or gentlemen, I should say. In your applique package bag, you have these two templates, and there's actually 2 pages. Actually, you're going to have 4 pages of each one. All right. They're really close when you're looking at them, and it's hard to tell the difference between them. So if you'll go to your instructions on page 5, there's an actual graphic right here that shows you which ones are labeled, okay? So what you want to do is look at that picture, and you're going to position the sheets to look just like that. And if you can't get it to look like that, then it's the wrong sheet. So basically, the 2 center pieces are different sizes. So if you look, this piece and this piece, this one and this one are different sizes. The rest of these are pretty close to the same size, so it's hard to tell the difference. But you do need to look at that sheet. So the very first one is this one. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to write the fabric number on there. And it's B3L5. And I think that that's not the fabric number, that's the template number, okay? So, and we want to have those on there too. So this sheet has my template, and this is B3L, and then it says 6. So as you go through and put those on and write everything out, then you're going to move up to the next graphic that's at the top of page 5, and that's going to tell you what your colors are for each one of those units. And so what you need to do is look at those, and after you figure out what your colors are, just take a little sample of your fabric, and you're going to glue those on. So this particular piece that I'm looking at right now is, and I think there's one more graphic in here. Yes, it's on page page 2. There's another graphic in there that tells you what the fabric numbers are as well. So if I'm looking at that graphic, I can actually tell that this piece right here is D5. So I would look for my D5 sample, which is right here, and I would take my little sample and I would just glue it on there, just like that. And then the next piece that goes on there is D6. And so I'd find my D6 sample, which is right here, and I would just glue a little sample on like that. And then the other one is my D4. And so I'm gonna put my D4 right there, okay? So basically what you're gonna do is organize all of your colors, just put a little sample on the first sheet, and then cut all the rest of them out just like that. Now I showed you guys the other day how to set up your sheets for cutting out. And remember how we took our rotary cutter, and I'm just gonna pull this one out of the way. And we just took our rotary cutter and we just cut along those lines like that. Okay? And then you can pop those pieces right out. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys how to set up the applique for these pieces. If you're doing the turn under applique that I'm teaching you, you have to put that applique on before you actually assemble your blocks. Now, you don't necessarily have to stitch it down, but you do need to have it glued in place. And there's a few of the little tips that actually overlap seams. So you won't be able to glue those tips down. So what I do is glue it about halfway. And then when we get ready to assemble, I just fold those back, pin them to the fabric. And then after we get done with the assembly, sewing the block together, then we can finish gluing those down. Now, I like to do the applique on the individual blocks prior to sewing everything together. In the big quilt. So what we're going to do is show you how to put the applique onto your pieces, then we're going to assemble the block, and then we'll do the applique. All right, so here's the step. Now on our template, on our applique pieces, remember that you had fabric numbers and then you were supposed to number your pieces on there. You're going to notice when you put it down how they actually fit onto the papers. On occasion, you're going to end up with some papers that the lines are really light, and that has to do with the amount of ink that's going through the printing process. So if your papers seem to be too light and you can't see those lines from the light table, just go ahead and just trace them. You can see them enough to trace them, and then it makes them darker so that you can see them through your fabric. Especially if you have kind of a printed fabric, it's not going to show up as much. So what we're going to do is I actually took the block and I overlapped all of the seams exactly where everything's going to fit. Now I can actually take my fabric pieces and set them on. Now, we talked about the TRP lines, and so I actually did just the stitching on the TRP lines, and I can see through them. But I did go out and sew some of the TRP lines on my pieces on the outside, because those I'm going to need when we start to assemble all of the blocks together to complete the quilt. And by then, my little the little holes from my needle are not going to show up. So I'm placing all of these right onto my foundation, or onto my paper templates. And those templates, those applique pieces that are on those templates are showing you the right side of the fabric. So when you're done, you don't want to flip the templates over, because the templates are set up so they're cut on the right side of the fabric, and therefore the applique pieces are cut out for the right side, okay? So now that I have that done, the one thing I forgot to do, and you need to do this because otherwise they're going to move on us, is we need to put just a little bit of repositionable glue on the top side as well, so that the fabric will actually stick down to the paper template and not move. So we've got that on there. Now when I put these on, they're going to stay put for me. I don't have to worry about the wind or anything moving them on me. And the thing I like about the repositionable glue is the sticky stuff actually stays on the paper. It doesn't transfer to the fabric. Okay, so now we've got our pieces. So we're gonna put our first pieces, and each one of these, so if you look, I've turned under the edges, but I didn't turn under down along the outside. So you need to look at your pieces as you're folding them over and see which ones overlap the next piece so that you know what you have to leave unfolded at the bottom. So this is my very center piece, and it's going to be the first piece on. It's also one of the pieces that's going to overlap. The tip is going to overlap. So what I'm going to do is just put my glue down along the base. And I'm going to put a little of it on the fabric as well as on the template. And then I'm going to match that up. And I have to make sure that that overlap overhangs into where the other templates are going to be placed over that so that my raw edges are covered. This is the second one because I have two edges there. And again, this one is actually going to overlap a seam, so we're only going to glue the bottom part of it. And these have to be placed down because I want this sewn into my seam allowance. I don't want to turn under and then butt it up to a seam. So this is going to make it, so see how it's coming right along the edge of the fabric? And now this one is turned under all the way, and then it's has a raw edge on the bottom and a little bit on the side. And it doesn't overlap anything, so I'm going to go ahead and run the glue all the way up towards the top of my piece. And we're going to put the tip on, and we're going to let that overlap on there the way it's supposed to. So it's going to overlap just a little bit, and then we're going to come in here and I'm going to just clean off any excess that I did not, so that it matches up with the bottom of the fabric. All right, so now we're going to take the next piece and we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to put the biggest piece, the first one is right there, and this does not overlap anything. And then this piece goes on next. And then this is my third piece. Okay, my pieces are all on, so now I'm going to pick up each one of these, and any place where I have an overlap, I'm actually just going to take and trim that off. And we're going to pick up the next piece. Notice how I didn't glue down those, because this is where I'm going to have to put a seam in there. So then we'll just take these and we'll just fold them back, and when we're ready to sew our seam. Okay, we're ready to sew our pieces together. I've got them all laid out here. There's this one thing that's really important, and that is to look to see which one is the right and which one's the left, okay? So with these blocks, this is my right side, this is my left side. So I like to get them all laid out, and then I remove the paper. Because if I put it over here, none of my smart corners are gonna match for me. So the only difference between the right and the left block on these units is the way the smart corner, the angle on which the smart corners are set up. And if you mix them up, then your smart corners aren't gonna match up when you start sewing, all right? So I've already removed the paper from those. It's the same way with these. These, you really can't get them messed up because they're just, they only go in one position. But one of the things you might notice is, see this piece here that's just hanging? You're gonna end up with a lot of those when you start doing paper piecing. So what I like to do is actually just kind of fold that back, and then I lay that down, and I just trim that off so that I don't have that long tail on the back, and I don't have to worry about it sewing into my seam, so I've just cleaned that off. I like to do that, check all my seams and make sure everything's laying down flat. And these two pieces here, we're actually going to leave the paper on, all right? Because we have a lot of heavy applique pieces that are going to get sewn onto this, and that paper is going to stabilize those pieces. So to sew this together, these two pieces go together first, so I'm just going to go ahead and get both of them set up. And it's going to be difficult. Whoops, I didn't get the paper off of that piece. I want to remove the paper. Now we have the paper off. You're going to notice in that last little video that there was paper on the bottom of that side. Okay, so now we're going to actually take our glue pen here, and I'm going to match up. And look, I have one of these corners. See how that piece is sticking out? So I'm just going to grab a pair of scissors here, and I'm going to trim that back just a little bit so that I don't have those extra pieces right on my tip. So now we're going to place this back down, and I'm going to glue those edges there. Then I'm going to come over down to the end, and I'm going to glue that. And because I have that applique there, it's going to seem a little stiff. So trying to get the whole thing glued on may not work out. But I'm also going to check, and there's my holes for my TRP line, and there's my TRP line. So I'm going to put a pin in that spot so that I don't end up stretching anything in the process of sewing. So again, I'm going to match the TRP line first on this one. We're going to put a pin in here. I'm going to check the tip here and make sure that there's no fabric in there. So I'm going to clean this out just a little bit right there. And now I'm going to glue that smart corner. And see how nicely that matches there around that corner? So we're going to put some glue on that one. And then we're going to come down, and I'm going to glue along that edge there. But I'm not going to glue the whole thing because I have those applique there. So if I glue it, then I can't manipulate it, and I may want to twist it just a little bit when I'm sewing. So we're gonna start sewing. We're gonna sew this seam. And I'm gonna grab a little piece of paper, fold it in half, and I'm gonna sew just a little bit on there. I'm gonna check my stitch length, and I'm gonna be at about 2.1. I want it a little bit tighter than my normal stitch, but I don't want it as tight as my my paper piecing stitch. So now I'm gonna get my needle set down, because when I'm doing curve piecing, and when you're doing curve piecing, you need to have your needle in the down position, because if you have to move it and your needle's up, then the whole piece moves. So I've got it set right on the tip of my smart corner, and we're gonna sew. And it looks like it's lining up and fitting just perfect the way they're supposed to. I'm gonna pull my pin out. And sew off at the end. And there's my first piece right there. And then we're gonna do the other side. And I'm gonna grab a piece of paper here. Okay, so I have both of those done. Now I'm going to remove the little pieces of paper, and I'm going to go to the iron, and I'm going to press those seams flat. And I'm going to actually press this towards the pieced unit. And I need to press it that way because that applique piece is so heavy right there. It still has that stabilizer in it. And now we're going to press this one. And I'm running this right along that curved seam like I showed you in the first video. Okay, so we have those two pieces ready. So the next seam I'm going to put in are the ones where I need to fold back the tips. So we're going to just grab a small pin. We're going to fold back those two tips. I'm going to grab two more. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to flip this piece over onto this. And I'm going to match up that corner there. And then we're going to come up here. And we're going to find that dashed line, the two little TRP lines. And we're going to match those. And I'm just going to put some glue right there. Then I'm going to run down, glue my tip. And I think that this is going to lay on here really nice. So I'm just going to put a little bit more glue along there. And there's another TRP line that I have to match. And it just fits perfect. Okay? So we're going to set that aside, and then we're going to do the same thing here. This one TRP line is actually right with the applique, so I'm going to pin that one here. And then we're going to find the next one. I'm just going to put some glue on that one spot. Get those matched up. And then we're going to match the tip. And then we're going to run some glue in between. And then I'm going to see if I can get this to glue. I may not be able to get this to glue down until I get to the machine. Well, it's working just fine. There we go. So now we're going to glue or sew both of those edges together. Okay, we have 2 seams left. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put some glue on those tips, and then I would suggest you let that dry just a little bit. All right? And after that's done, and one way you can do is speed it up to dry if you're in a hurry, is actually go to the iron and set it up with the iron. I want you to see the back, so see how I press this into the back? So I press both of those pieces into the pieced unit, both seams, okay? Now the next seam that goes on is the one where we're leaving the paper on, and we have a TRP line that we have to match up. So I'm going to match that and put a pin in it. And then I'm going to roll this. And if this moves under here, I can actually put a little bit more glue on that edge there. And then I'm going to put some glue right on this. And then I'm going to fit that corner. Do you see how I'm fitting that corner? Get my, so that it looks just like, comes right around there on that corner. And then we're going to go down and we're going to fit the other corner. So we're going to do the same thing with this one. And after we get both ends matched up, then we're going to glue the rest of the piece in between. And see how nice that fits along there? So now we're going to sew both of those ends together. Something else I want to show you is sometimes people have a hard time figuring out where they're supposed to sew on a smart corner. Well, if you actually look at your paper is going to tell you where that seam should be start and stop on both ends. Okay, so now I'm going to remove the paper from this unit. And after I get the paper off, I'm going to run over and press it. And at this point, I am not exactly sure which way I'm supposed to press that. So I need to go back to my instructions and look to see how I want to press it, okay? Because your instructions are going to set you up for opposing seams on some of these. So I have it pressed in the right place, and here's your assembly graphics, and those assembly graphics are going to tell you which way to press. There's some little dotted lines on there, so pay attention to those little lines and the arrows, and it'll tell you which way to press. And I have it pressed going in the right direction. We're going to move this piece out of the way, and I'm just going to finish this side for you. And I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to glue the raw edges. I'm going to fit that right along there. And then I'm going to match my TRP lines. Place a small pin in there. And then I'm going to glue in up until it hits the TRP line. Okay. And this one seam right here, see how it kind of folds back? I'm going to actually just trim that off. And then it's going to take the bulk out of that, and I don't have to worry about it getting in the way. And we're going to finish this up. And I'm going to take that right around that corner. So this is a curved, this smart corner is set up to match around the curve of this. And so it's going to be a lot longer. So when we sew, we're going to actually sew as if we're going around a curve. We're not going to just sew straight off, because if we sew straight off, we're not going to have our seam in the right place. Okay. Let's sew that seam. Grab a little piece of paper. Let's set this up. And I'm going to sew right over the point. Make sure my raw edges are matching. And now I'm going to put some more paper underneath the end of that so that I can roll that around properly. And catch that point the way it needs to be sewn. Remove the paper. And now we're going to check our seams. We're going to make sure that they're flat. So I'm going to put just a little bit of glue on this piece right here on the inside seam allowance. Then I'm going to fold that back so it's nice and flat and straight along that seam. Then we're going to do the same thing down here. And then I'm going to get that so that I know that it's nice and flat. Then I'm going to go to my iron, and I'm going to iron my piece. So And there's the first half of my piece, and see how straight that line is and how straight this line is? That's what you want to look at. Because if these aren't straight where you've joined those curves, then your pieces aren't going to match up when you go to sew your blocks together. So I'm going to sew this one together and then we'll come back. Okay, this is the block that's finished. You're not going to do any more sewing on this. At this point, I would go to the machine and start doing all of the machine applique on those pieces. If you guys are doing the digitized applique design, the instructions in the pattern don't tell you to sew this block together, but you're going to have to sew that block together in order to get it into your hoop. Okay, so you want to sew the block together, then you're going to come back, put the applique in place on your light table the way her instructions tell you to do that. All right, now you can go about this two ways, because if you sew these together, you're going to create about 34 Y seams in your quilt. And the way to avoid that is you can leave the ends open like this. Now, if you don't want to leave them open, you can actually sew them shut, and after you get the applique blocks done, then you can come back and just pick them out, and now you'll be able to join it to the sections it needs to be just sewn onto in your instructions. And we're going to have a special set of assembly graphics that show you how to assemble these pieces.
Thank you for being a part of our workshop on the 16-inch flowering cactus block. Please make sure you are subscribed to the Quiltworx YouTube channel to receive notifications in July for the release of the border and the digitized embroidery classes. We will see you on July 11th and July 25th as we work to finish up the Valley Blossoms quilt.